I thought I could make a difference, but it seems I was wrong.
I never thought I'd get a call like that. One moment I was sitting in my kitchen sipping coffee, and the next my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a shaky voice told me there had been an accident, and that my car was involved. My heart sank. That car wasn't just any car. It was my pride, my sanctuary, the thing I had poured years of sweat, money, and late nights into restoring. Every inch of it had a memory attached. The first coat of paint, the long weekends spent under the hood, the moment I turned the key and heard it roar back to life for the first time. But it wasn't just wrecked. It was wrecked by the one person I never expected, by my own son, Lucas. He hadn't asked. He hadn't called. He had simply taken it as if it was his right, and now it was gone. I felt anger bubbling up, hot and sharp, but I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. Instead, I sat there in silence, letting the weight of it all settle. Because deep down, I knew something Lucas didn't. This wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning. What he didn't know was that the car he had taken wasn't the most valuable thing I owned. It wasn't even close. And when I showed him the truth, when I revealed what I had been keeping hidden all these years, it would change everything. So I got up, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. Not to yell, not to punish, but to teach him a lesson he would never forget. I've always believed that what you build with your own two hands carries a piece of your soul. My name is Charlie, and for as long as I can remember, I've been building, fixing, and tinkering with machines. I wasn't born into money or privilege. In fact, I grew up in a small house with peeling paint on the porch and a driveway made of cracked concrete. My father was a factory worker, and my mother kept the house running, and they taught me that nothing in life comes for free. You work for what you want, you sweat for it, and you respect what you earn. From the time I was a teenager, I saved every penny I could from odd jobs, mowing lawns, delivering papers, fixing neighbors' bikes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And all those years of grinding led to the day I bought my first car. It wasn't much to look at back then. Rust along the sides, a tired engine that coughed more than it purred, and an interior that smelled like an old barn. But to me, it was a dream. I didn't just buy a car that day. I bought a vision of what it could become. Restoring that car became my obsession. Nights after work, I'd be in the garage with the door half open, a single lamp hanging overhead, music playing, low as I worked until my back ached. I learned everything there was to know about carburetors, wiring, bodywork. Every paycheck went partly to bills, partly to food, and whatever was left went into that car. Piece by piece, month by month, it started to transform. The rust came off, the paint gleamed, and the engine came to life like a heartbeat I had resurrected, with my own hands. People in the neighborhood would stop by to see my progress. They'd lean against the fence and watch as I installed new parts, shake their heads and say, "Charlie, you've got the patience of a saint." And maybe I did, but it wasn't just patience. It was purpose. That car was more than metal and wheels. It was proof that with enough work you could take something broken and make it whole again. When Lucas was born, I thought about all the lessons I wanted to teach him. I wanted him to grow up knowing what pride feels like when you've earned something yourself. I wanted him to understand that value isn't just in the price tag. It's in the time, the effort, the love you pour into something. As he grew up, I'd sometimes take him into the garage with me, put a wrench in his little hand, and let him help me with something small. He'd laugh when he got grease on his face, and I'd smile, thinking one day this car would be his and he'd take care of it the way I had. Life went on, and like many parents, I worked long hours to make sure Lucas had what he needed. School trips, new clothes, a laptop when he asked for one. I didn't spoil him. At least I didn't think I did. But I made sure he never felt the hunger or struggle I had growing up. Somewhere along the way, though, something shifted. He became distant, distracted. I'd ask him to come out to the garage and help, but he'd roll his eyes, say he was too busy, or that he didn't care about some old car. It hurt, but I let it go. Kids grow up, they find their own interests, I told myself. I'd keep working on the car anyway, because even if Lucas didn't understand now, maybe one day he would. Maybe one day he'd see the value in what I was trying to pass down to him. By the time the car was finished, it was a thing of beauty. The kind of car that made people stop and turn their heads when it passed by. The paint shimmered like polished glass under the sun. The chrome shone like a mirror. And when the engine started, it purred with the smoothness of a brand new machine. I didn't just own a car. I owned a piece of history that I had brought back from the dead. My garage became more than just a place to store tools. It was a time capsule. Photos lined the walls of the car in its early days, of me covered in sweat and grease, smiling proudly next to it. There were receipts and manuals neatly stacked on shelves, proof of every part I'd bought, every repair I'd made. To anyone else, it might have looked like just a hobby. To me, it was a legacy. Outside, my house was modest but comfortable. White siding, a small front yard, a porch with a swing that creaked a little when the wind blew. Inside, it was filled with mementos of a life spent working hard and loving deeply. Family photos, birthday cards from years past. Little things that meant more to me than their dollar value ever could. That's the world Lucas came home to. When he visited, he'd step into my house, phone in hand, scrolling through whatever was happening online, barely looking around. He'd nod when I offered him coffee, sit down, and we'd talk. But it wasn't like it used to be. I could feel the distance, like we were living in two different worlds, and maybe we were. He lived in a world where things came quickly, where cars could be leased, traded, swapped like fashion accessories, where respect wasn't earned through hard work but demanded instantly. And I lived in a world where every scratch on my hands was a badge of honor, where you took care of what you owned because it took care of you in return. Still, every time he came home, I hoped maybe this would be the visit where we'd reconnect, where he'd come out to the garage, see the car shining under the light, and finally ask me about it. Where I could hand him the keys and feel proud, knowing he understood what they represented. But that day never came. At least, not the way I imagined it. The day the conflict truly began started like any other visit. Lucas had texted that he was coming over for the weekend. I was happy to hear it. It had been months since I'd seen him. I spent the morning tidying up the house, stocking the fridge with his favorite snacks, and giving the car one last polish just because I liked the way it looked gleaming in the sun. When Lucas arrived, he barely said hello before disappearing into his old room with his phone. I let him have his space. He was an adult now, after all. But a small ache settled in my chest. I missed the days when we used to talk for hours. That evening we had dinner together. I tried to start a conversation, asking about his job, his friends, what he'd been up to. He answered with short phrases, distracted, checking his phone every few minutes. "You still working on that car?" he asked at one point, a hint of mockery in his tone. "Every chance I get," I said, smiling, trying to keep things light. "She's running smoother than ever. You should come out to the garage later, see what you think." He smirked. "It's just a car, Dad. You act like it's a treasure." I swallowed my irritation. To him, maybe it was just a car. But to me, it was 30 years of sweat and late nights made solid. I let the comment slide, not wanting to start a fight. That night I went to bed early, leaving the garage locked as always. I kept the keys on a hook by the kitchen door, a habit so old I didn't think twice about it. The next morning I woke up to silence. The house was empty. I checked the kitchen, no note, no message. Then I looked at the key hook. Empty. My chest tightened. I went to the driveway, and sure enough, the car was gone. At first I tried to calm myself. Maybe Lucas had just taken it for a quick spin, maybe he'd be back in a few minutes. But minutes turned into an hour, then 2. I paced the house, my stomach in knots, every worst-case scenario running through my mind. Then the phone rang. The voice on the other end was hesitant, nervous. "Sir, I'm calling about your car. There's been an accident." I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. My first thought wasn't about insurance or repairs. It was about Lucas. "Is he okay?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. "He's fine," the caller said quickly. "Shaken up, but not hurt. The car, Not so much. By the time I got to the scene, my hands were shaking. The car was crumpled on the side of the road, the hood bent upward like a broken jaw. Lucas stood a few feet away, head down, arms crossed, looking like a kid who'd just been caught doing something he knew was wrong. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just stared at the wreckage. All those years, all those nights, all those dreams, gone in one morning. Lucas finally spoke. "It wasn't my fault, Dad. Some guy cut me off. You took the car without asking," I said, my voice low and steady. "You didn't even leave a note." He shrugged, defensive. "I just wanted to drive it. You never let me. It's not like I meant to crash it." That's when something inside me shifted. It wasn't just the car. It was what the car represented. Respect, responsibility, all the lessons I had tried to teach him over the years. And he had thrown it all away like it was nothing. We rode, home in silence after the tow truck came. Lucas tried to make small talk once, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to forgive. Back at the house, he slammed his bedroom door, muttering under his breath. I stood in the garage, staring at the empty space where the car had been, feeling the weight of 30 years pressing down on me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the crushed metal, Lucas's careless tone, the way he seemed more annoyed at being caught than sorry for what he'd done. By morning, my anger had cooled into something sharper, something colder. Yelling at him wouldn't fix anything. Lecturing him wouldn't get through. He needed to understand what he'd done, not just to the car, but to me. And that's when I remembered what was sitting quietly in my storage unit across town. My real treasure, the thing Lucas had no idea even existed. I smiled to myself, a plan forming in my mind. If Lucas thought he could take what was mine without respect, he was about to learn that not everything was his for the taking. The next few days were heavy with silence. Lucas stayed mostly in his room, only coming out for food or to make a quick phone call. I could hear his voice through the thin walls, joking with friends, complaining about being stuck at Dad's place. Every word cut a little deeper. I spent my time in the garage, staring at the empty spot where the car used to sit. The smell of motor oil and old wood was still there, a reminder of all the hours I'd poured into this place. I ran my hands along the workbench over the wrenches and sockets lined up in perfect order. Each tool had its history, its memory. I'd taught Lucas how to use them once, back when he was small enough to sit on the bench with his feet dangling. Back when he still looked at me with admiration instead of indifference. I thought about the day I first brought him out here. He couldn't have been more than 7. I showed him how to loosen a bolt, guided his tiny hand until he got it right, and he had grinned like he'd just won a prize. That moment had meant everything to me. And now, years later, I couldn't help but wonder where that boy had gone. The truth was, this wasn't just about a car. This was about every time I'd stayed late at work so I could buy him something he wanted. Every time I'd gone without so he wouldn't have to. This was about the trust that should have been there between us but somehow wasn't anymore. One evening I heard him moving around in the kitchen. I decided to try again, to reach him. "Lucas," I said, keeping my voice calm. "We need to talk." He didn't look up from his phone. "About what?" "About what happened, about the car, about respect." He sighed, clearly irritated. "Dad, it was an accident. I said I was sorry." I shook my head slowly. "You didn't say sorry. You gave me an excuse. There's a difference." That finally made him look up. His jaw was set, defensive. "What do you want from me? You act like I totaled a house or something. It's just a car. Get it fixed." I felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp. "Just a car? Lucas, that car is 30 years of my life. 30 years of work, of sacrifice. It's the reason I came home late all those nights, the reason I missed some of your soccer games. Because I was working to make sure we had a roof over our heads and a future to look forward to. That car is a part of me." He rolled his eyes, muttering under his breath. "Yeah, well, maybe that's the problem. You care more about that car than anything else." The words hit me like a slap. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. Did he really believe that? After everything I had done for him, did he really think I valued metal over my own son? I turned away before I said something I'd regret. The conversation was going nowhere, and deep down I knew yelling wouldn't fix it. If anything, it would only push him further away. That night, lying awake in bed, I realized I was fighting two battles, one with my son and one inside myself. Part of me wanted to punish him, to let him feel the sting of losing something precious. But another part of me wanted to find a way to bring him back to me, to help him understand without driving him away for good. The next morning, Lucas came into the kitchen, grabbing a cup of coffee. He looked tired, maybe even a little guilty, though he didn't say anything. "Come with me later," I said quietly. He frowned. "Where?" "You'll see." He hesitated, clearly weighing whether to argue, but something in my tone must have told him I was serious because he nodded and walked away. I spent the rest of the morning preparing. Not just mentally, I wanted this to make an impact. I gathered the old photos of the car's restoration, the receipts, the progress shots I'd taken over the years. I laid them out on the workbench in the garage, a timeline of everything I had built. When the time came, we got in my truck and drove in silence. I could feel Lucas's curiosity growing, the farther we went. "Where are we going?" he asked eventually. "You'll know when we get there," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. We pulled into the storage facility just as the sun was starting to set. The orange light made the row of metal doors glow faintly, casting long shadows. I parked, got out, and walked toward Unit 17, my secret, the place I'd been keeping locked away for years. Lucas followed, hands in his pockets, clearly confused. "What is this place?" I didn't answer. Instead, I unlocked the door and slowly rolled it up. Inside, the air smelled faintly of oil and leather. The lights flickered on, revealing a sight that made Lucas stop dead in his tracks. 3 cars, gleaming and perfect, lined up side by side, each one rarer, more beautiful than the one before. His mouth fell open. You have more?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, and they're worth more than the one you wrecked. I kept them hidden because I wanted to pass them on someday, to someone who respected what they meant, but now I have to wonder if you're ready for that responsibility." For the first time since the crash, Lucas didn't have a comeback. He just stood there, staring at the cars, then back at me. I could see it in his face, the realization that he had underestimated me, that he had mistaken my calm for weakness. Didn't lecture him. I didn't raise my voice. I just let the weight of that moment sink in. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the storage unit's overhead light. Lucas stepped closer, slowly, as if afraid to breathe too, hard near the cars. He walked around them in silence, his hands trailing over the smooth, polished curves. Each step seemed to weigh heavier on him, like he was carrying more than just guilt. He was carrying the realization of what his actions had really cost. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know." "No," I said, my tone calm but firm. "You didn't ask, and that's the problem." He turned to look at me, his expression a mix of shame and defensiveness. "You never told me about these. How was I supposed to know?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the door frame. "I didn't tell you because I wanted you to earn that knowledge. I wanted you to show me you respected the first car before I even considered showing you the rest. That car you wrecked, that was the test, and you failed." The words hit him like a blow. He flinched, then looked away, his jaw tightening. For a moment, I thought he might storm off, but he stayed, staring at the floor. "You think I don't respect you?" he said finally. "You think I don't care about anything you've done, but that's not true. Then why did you take it without asking?" My voice stayed quiet, but there was an edge to it. "Why did you shrug it off like it didn't matter when I confronted you?" He hesitated, his shoulders sagging. Because I didn't think you'd say yes if I asked. You guard that thing like it's gold, and every time I see you working on it, I feel like you're choosing it over me." Like it's more important than I am. His words stopped me in my tracks. I hadn't expected that. You think that car is more important than you? I asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. Something in my chest twisted. This wasn't just about a wrecked car, and it was about years of unspoken resentment building up between us. I realized, maybe for the first time, that while I was trying to teach Lucas the value of hard work, he might have been feeling like he was competing with the very thing I loved. I took a slow breath, trying to keep my own emotions in check. Lucas, that car was never more important than you. Not once. Everything I did, the overtime, the late nights in this garage, it was for you. So you could have a better life. So one day when I handed you those keys, you'd understand what it meant. That you'd take care of it not because it was a car, but because it was a piece of me. A piece of us. He ran a hand through his hair, looking troubled. I didn't think of it like that. I just wanted to feel like I mattered to you. You do matter, I said firmly, but respect goes both ways. I can't trust you with something valuable if you treat it like it's disposable, if you treat my trust like it's disposable. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and unmovable. Lucas sank onto an old stool against the wall, his face in his hands. For a moment, he didn't say anything. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. I'm sorry, Dad. I mean it this time. I didn't just wreck your car. I wrecked your trust. And I don't know how to fix that. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, not to see him crushed by guilt, but to see him finally understand. You start by showing me, I said gently. By proving that you can take responsibility, that you can learn from this instead of running from it. That's how trust gets rebuilt, one step at a time. He nodded slowly, wiping his face with the back of his hand. Then tell me what to do. I glanced back at the cars, the shining legacy I had built over the years. First, we go back to the garage. We clean up what's left of the car you wrecked. Then we rebuild it. Together. Piece by piece. You're going to get your hands dirty this time. You're going to learn what it feels like to put in the hours, to sweat over every bolt, to stay up late making something right again. And when it's done, you'll know what that car means, and not because I told you, but because you lived it. He stood slowly, nodding again, a determined look settling on his face. Okay. As we drove home, the air between us felt different. Still tense, but no longer cold. Lucas stared out the window, deep in thought, while I kept my eyes on the road, a plan already forming in my mind. This wasn't going to be easy. Rebuilding the car would take time, money, and patience. But maybe that was exactly what we both needed. When we pulled back into the driveway, Lucas didn't go straight to his room like before. Instead, he followed me into the garage, standing quietly as I laid out tools on the workbench. For the first time in years, it felt like we were on the same side. The next morning, the sun had barely risen when I heard footsteps in the kitchen. Lucas was already awake, standing there with a cup of coffee, looking hesitant, but ready. It was the first sign that he meant what he said, that he was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. Ready? I asked, grabbing my jacket. He nodded. Yeah, let's do it. We drove to the mechanic's lot where the wrecked car had been towed. When we arrived, I could see Lucas's expression harden. There it was, the twisted frame of what used to be my pride and joy, sitting lopsided on the gravel. The sight of it still hit me like a punch to the gut. This is where we start, I said quietly. Lucas swallowed hard, walking up to the car. For the first time, he really looked at it, not as something to dismiss, not as an object he felt entitled to, but as something he had broken. I saw his shoulders slump as the guilt seemed to weigh him down. Dad, he said, his voice low. I didn't think it would hurt this much to see it like this. I put a hand on his shoulder. Good. That means you're starting to understand. We had the car towed back to my garage where we set it up on jacks and got to work. The first few days were grueling. I had him start with the dirty jobs, draining the oil, pulling out the bent parts, cleaning the frame with rags until the grease stained his hands. He didn't complain, not once. I could see the determination in his face, the silent apology. In every bolt he loosened. Every night we'd spend hours in the garage. I'd teach him step by step just like I used to when he was a boy. Except this time he was listening. He asked questions, paid attention, and when he made mistakes, he corrected them without arguing. One night, about 2 weeks in, we were replacing a section of the wiring harness when Lucas suddenly stopped and sat back on his heels. "You know," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead, "I used to think you were obsessed with this car, like it was all you cared about. But I think I get it now. It's not just a car, it's a piece of you. And I wrecked it because I didn't see that." I set my wrench down and looked at him. "It's more than a piece of me, Lucas. It's a lesson. Life will give you plenty of shiny new things if you're lucky, but if you don't respect what you already have, you'll lose it. And sometimes, you can't get it back." He nodded slowly, clearly taking it in. "Do you regret letting me rebuild it with you?" he asked carefully. "No," I said after a pause. "This is what I wanted all along, for you to understand, for you to be part of this. Maybe it took wrecking it to make that happen, but at least we're here now. For the first time in months, maybe years." We smiled at each other. A small, quiet smile, but it meant something. Over the next several weeks, the car began to come back to life. The dents were hammered out, new parts installed, fresh paint gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and with each step, something else was being rebuilt too, the bond between us. Lucas started staying later in the garage, sometimes even coming out before I asked. He stopped spending so much time on his phone, choosing instead to sit with me and go over parts lists or watch me demonstrate how to do something before trying it himself. There were still moments of frustration, a bolt that wouldn't budge, a part that didn't fit, but instead of storming off, he stuck with it. One night, as we stood back to admire the nearly finished car, Lucas let out a long breath. "I get it now," he said quietly. "This isn't just about the car, it's about respect, about putting something back together even when it's easier to just throw it away." I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. "Exactly. And now you know why I kept those other cars a secret. They weren't just for me, they were meant to be a gift one day, but not until I knew you'd treat them with the care they deserve." He turned to me, his expression serious. "I don't deserve that gift. Not yet. But I promise I'll earn it." And for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I believed him. When the day finally came to take the restored car for a drive, I tossed him the keys. His eyes widened. "You're letting me drive?" I smiled. "You helped rebuild it. You've earned the right to drive it. Carefully." He laughed softly, almost nervously, and slid behind the wheel. I got in on the passenger side, and as the engine roared to life, we both sat there for a moment just listening. Then we pulled out of the driveway together, father and son side by side. The car rolled smoothly down the road like it had been waiting for this moment all along. It wasn't just a drive, it was a turning point. The car was whole again, and so were we. For a while, things were good. The tension between us had faded, replaced by something steadier, stronger. We worked together most evenings, even when the car was already complete. Little projects here and there, oil changes, tuning the engine just for fun. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my son back. But I knew we weren't finished, yet. Words are easy. Even actions can be easy if someone knows they're being watched. What mattered most was who Lucas was when it really counted. When he was faced with temptation, pressure, or choice. And as fate would have it, the test came sooner than I expected. One Saturday, I invited Lucas back to the storage unit. He seemed puzzled but followed without complaint. When we arrived, I opened the door, revealing not just the 3 cars he'd already seen, but a 4th, freshly detailed, sleek, a showstopper I had been keeping under wraps until the right moment. "This," I said, gesturing toward it, "is the rarest one I own. The crown jewel." I've had offers from collectors that could buy us a house twice over, but I've never sold it. Lucas's eyes widened. It's beautiful. It is, I agreed, and one day it's going to be yours, if you're ready for that kind of responsibility. He nodded solemnly, but I could see a flicker of uncertainty in his expression, as though the weight of it scared him a little. Good. That meant he understood how serious this was. Over the next week, I gave him more freedom with the restored car. I tossed him the keys whenever he asked, trusting him to take it for a spin. He always came back on time, careful, respectful. But deep down, I still wondered, was this real change, or just temporary guilt? One evening, as we sat in the garage after a long day of tinkering, Lucas spoke up. Dad, I've been thinking, what if we sold one of the cars, just one? We could split the money, invest it, maybe even take a trip somewhere, do something we've never done before. I didn't answer right away. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the chance to see if he truly understood what these cars meant, or if he still saw them as just expensive toys. Lucas, I said slowly, if we sold one, there's no going back. Once it's gone forever. Are you sure that's what you want? He hesitated, staring at the floor. I don't know, it just seems like we could use it for something new. Something that moves us forward instead of keeping us stuck in the past. I leaned back, crossing my arms. These cars aren't about the past. They're about what we built, about the discipline, the patience, the respect that went into them. You think selling one will buy you freedom, but it might cost you more than you realize. For a moment, there was silence between us. Then, Lucas nodded slowly. You're right. I don't want to sell them. Not yet. Not until I know I'd be doing it for the right reasons. Not just because I want quick cash. I felt something inside me ease. This wasn't the defensive boy who had stood by that wrecked car weeks ago. This was a young man making a conscious choice, one that put value over convenience. Still, I decided to take it one step further. Tomorrow, I said, I want you to take the restored car to the weekend auto show. Put it on display, talk to people about it, let them see what you helped build. He blinked, clearly surprised. You want me to represent it? Alone? Yes, I said simply. Because this is your chance to show me and yourself that you can carry this legacy with pride. The next morning, we drove together to the auto show. The field was packed with rows of gleaming machines, proud owners standing nearby to answer questions. I parked the truck and trailer, helped him unload the car, then stepped back. This is on you, I said. I'll be nearby, but I'm not stepping in unless you need me. This is your test. Lucas took a deep breath, wiped his hands on his jeans, and nodded. I won't let you down. All day I watched from a distance as people came and went. Some complimented the car, others asked about the restoration process. Lucas stood tall, answering their questions with confidence. I could see the pride in his face as he spoke. Not just pride in the car, but pride in himself. Late in the afternoon, a man in a suit approached. He was clearly a collector, judging by the way he looked at the car. After a few minutes of conversation, I saw him hand Lucas a card. Lucas looked at it, hesitated, then shook his head politely and handed it back. When he came over to me later, I asked, "What was that about?" He offered to buy it, Lucas said, still a little stunned. For more money than I've ever seen in my life. But I told him no. I told him this car isn't for sale. I felt a smile spread across my face, slow and proud. That, I said, was the right answer. Lucas grinned for the first time in a long time, a real grin that reached his eyes. I think I finally get it, Dad. And for the first time since this entire ordeal began, I knew he really did. The sun was starting to dip by the time we loaded the car back onto the trailer. Lucas was quiet on the drive home, staring out the window. But this time it wasn't. The same silence that had filled the house weeks ago. This was thoughtful, calm, the kind of quiet that comes after a turning point when something has finally clicked into place. When we got home, I didn't park the trailer right away. Instead, I turned toward him and said, "Come with me." He looked confused but followed me across the driveway, through the garage and into the house. I grabbed the keys to the storage unit from the hook and held them out to him. "Take us. There?" I said. He hesitated, looking at me as if to confirm I was serious. When I nodded, he took the keys and we drove back in his car. Not mine. It felt symbolic, letting him be the one behind the wheel this time. When we arrived, I let him unlock the door. The metal door rolled up with a satisfying rumble, revealing the 3 rare cars still lined up under the soft glow of the overhead lights. Lucas stepped inside, looking around as if he were seeing them for the first time all over again. I walked past him, stopping in front of the oldest car, a classic roadster that had been sitting there untouched for years. "This one," I said, running a hand over the hood, "is the first car I ever bought after I married your mother. I restored it when you were just a baby. I kept it here because I wanted it to be something special, something I could give you when you were ready." He turned to me, his eyes wide. "Dad, I held up a hand. "You earned it today. Not just because you said no to that man's offer, but because you finally understood what all of this means. You respected the work. You respected me. And now I trust you to respect this." I pulled the keys from my pocket and held them out. For a long moment, Lucas didn't move. Then, slowly, he reached out and took them, his fingers trembling just slightly. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "Then don't say anything," I replied. "Show me. Take care of it, keep it safe. And when the time comes, pass it on to someone who'll understand the way I did for you." He swallowed hard, nodding. "I will. I promise." There was a weight in that promise that hadn't been there before, and I believed him. For the first time in a long time, I believed in the man my son was becoming. We spent the next hour just sitting in the storage unit, talking, really talking. About cars, about life, about the mistakes we'd both made. I told him things I'd never said out loud, how lonely it had been after he moved out, how I'd poured more and more time into the garage because I didn't know how else to fill the space he left behind. He listened, and for once he didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said quietly, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I should have been here more. I should have cared more." "It's not too late," I said softly. "You're here now. That's what matters." As we closed up the storage unit and drove home, there was a lightness between us that hadn't been there before. It felt like we had crossed a bridge together, one that had been crumbling for years but was finally rebuilt, stronger than before. Back at the house, I parked the trailer and turned to Lucas. "Tomorrow, we start planning the next project," I said with a grin. He looked surprised. "Another car?" I nodded. "Another car. But this time, we build it together from day one. No secrets, no surprises." He smiled, a wide, genuine smile, and, for the first time, I saw the boy I used to know and the man he was becoming at the same time. "I'd like that," he said. That night, as I locked up the garage, I stood for a moment and looked at the empty space where the wrecked car had once sat. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a beginning. Maybe Lucas had wrecked more than just a car that day. Maybe he'd wrecked the wall between us, and maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. The next morning felt different. There was no heaviness in the air, no unspoken tension hanging over breakfast. Instead, Lucas and I sat together at the table, quietly sipping coffee. For once, it didn't feel like we were strangers living under the same roof. When we headed out to the garage, Lucas didn't wait for me to tell him what to do. He grabbed the broom and started sweeping up the dust and metal shavings from our last late-night session. I watched him for a moment, quietly proud. This was a boy who used to roll his eyes at the thought of doing anything with me. Now he was leading the way. We spent the day going over plans for the next car we'd build, a shell I had been saving for years, something I'd always imagined turning into a masterpiece. This time, I didn't just hand him a wrench and tell him what to do. I asked him what he thought, listened to his ideas, and watched as he sketched out possible designs on the workbench paper. This wasn't just about cars anymore. This was about rebuilding trust brick by brick, one conversation, one shared project at a time. That evening, we sat on the porch as the sun set, the sound of summer crickets filling the air. Lucas leaned back against the rail and said, "I used to think you cared more about those cars than you did about me. But now I get it. You cared about what they represented, about teaching me to value things, to work hard, to earn what I wanted." I nodded slowly. "I didn't always do the best job of showing you that, son. I thought if I just worked hard enough and built something worth passing on, you'd understand one day. But I should have said it out loud. I should have told you what it meant, not just hoped you'd figure it out." Lucas glanced at me, thoughtful. I guess we both had things we should have said sooner. For a long moment, we just sat there, letting that truth hang between us, not as a burden but as a shared understanding. The silence didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. It felt peaceful. Over the next several weeks, Lucas kept showing up. Some days we worked until our hands ached. Other days we just sat in the garage talking about life, about where he wanted to go next. He told me about his struggles, the pressure he'd felt to prove himself, the fear that he'd never live up to my expectations. "That's why I took the car," he admitted one night. "I just wanted to feel like I was good enough, like I could be part of what you built, even if I didn't earn it." Hearing that broke my heart a little, but it also gave me hope. You never had to earn my pride, Lucas. You just had to respect yourself and me enough to want to do things the right way, and now you are. The day we finished our first project together, we stood back and admired it. A perfect piece of craftsmanship, gleaming under the light. Lucas wiped sweat from his face, grinning like a kid again. "This one's ours," he said proudly. Smiled. "That's right. Ours." We decided to take it for a drive that night, just like we had done when we first finished restoring the wrecked car. The two of us cruised down the back roads with the windows rolled down, the engine humming, the stars overhead. It felt like a celebration, not just of the car, but of everything we'd rebuilt. Respect, trust, family. When we got home, Lucas parked the car carefully, shut off the engine, and sat there for a moment in the quiet. Then he turned to me. "Thanks, Dad, for giving me another chance, for teaching me instead of just giving up on me." I put a hand on his shoulder. "Everyone deserves a second chance when they're willing to work for it. I'm proud of you, son. Not just for what we built, but for who you're becoming." Nodded, his expression solemn but full of gratitude. That night, as I closed the garage door and turned off the lights, I realized something. The car had never really been the point. It had been the bridge, the thing that connected us when words weren't enough. In the end, I hadn't just rebuilt a car. I had rebuilt a relationship. And as I stood there in the quiet, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The lesson was simple but powerful. Things can be fixed, but trust has to be earned. And when it is, it's stronger than ever before. When Lucas left a few days later, he hugged me before he went. Not the quick, distracted kind of hug he used to give, but a real one, the kind that says something words can't. And as he drove off, I didn't feel worried anymore. I knew he'd be back, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Standing there in the driveway, I looked at the cars lined up in the garage, each one shining like a quiet testament to what we'd been through. They weren't just machines, they were reminders of where we'd been, of what we'd lost, and of what we'd found again. In that moment, I knew the lesson had stuck. And I knew that one day Lucas would pass those cars and those lessons onto someone else, keeping the legacy alive. Because respect, like a well-built engine, lasts when you take care of it. And this time we'd both learned how. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to think about what it really means. Have you ever had something, or someone, that you poured your heart into, only to see it disrespected or taken for granted? Have you ever had to teach someone a hard lesson, not out of anger, but because you wanted them to grow? Charlie's story isn't just about a car. It's about the bonds we build, the trust we protect, and the painful process of repairing what's been broken, whether it's metal, memories, or relationships. Sometimes we have to let people face the consequences of their actions, Sometimes we have to hold them accountable before we can truly forgive. And when they finally get it, when they finally show us they're ready to take responsibility, that's when real healing begins. I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in Charlie's shoes? What would you have done if you were him? Would you have reacted with calm patience, or would you have let your anger take control? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your stories might just inspire someone else who's struggling with forgiveness or respect. And if you felt the weight of this story, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It helps more people find these powerful, emotional stories. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. We've got more stories coming that will touch your heart, challenge your thinking, and maybe even make you cry. Respect, trust, and second chances, they're worth fighting for. Let's keep that conversation going together.